Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Catcher in the Rye. By J.D. Salinger. In The Catcher in the Rye, the focus is not on the events, but rather on the protagonist. Emotional and mental state of the protagonist is crucial to the novel's plot. Rather than a hero, the character is an introvert who is simply watching the world around him and has no plans. The primary character's associations and thoughts connect the many events. Associative and monologue-based occurrences interrupt the flow of the story, which is based on the character's inner world. As in conventional novels, time and space dissolve and are not inimitable, and they are portrayed to us from a subjective standpoint. In the first-person narrator, the stream of consciousness is the most common method of storytelling. The story is narrated from the point of view of the main character, and the characters are all young people who are dissatisfied with conventional morals and ideals. The narrative process includes colloquialisms and vulgarities. As the story's narrator and protagonist, Holden Caulfield, a 17-year-old high school student, wanders around New York City during his adolescence crisis and has above-average intelligence for his age, but he struggles with emotional immaturity. A teenager's perspective on the world, adolescence's system of value, and more is expressed by Holden Caulfield. Just books written by authors he'd like to meet one day are on his list of reading material. Snobbishness, false morals, and social injustice are all targets of his scornful criticism of society. He is an advocate of openness, spontaneity, and genuineness, and his sardonic outlook on life is evident in the way he speaks and thinks. One of the most well-known symbols of the separation between adults and children is the red hat worn by him during his few days in New York City. He dreams of being a catcher in the rye, verses by Robert Burns. His dream is to catch youngsters while they play in the rye from the edge of the cliff. Because it is tied to the death of his brother, it is regarded one of the primary motives. Ali died of leukemia. Because he wants to save the children, he's diving off the very precipice he's trying to avoid. Holden's difficulty to get along with others and his opposition to being in places he isn't supposed to are depicted through the descriptions of the places he is in, such as hotels and bars. The adult world is shown as a mummy's world at the end of the novels, and the protagonist longs to return to his youth. New Yorker Holden Caulfield, now 17, has been admitted to a psychiatric facility on the West Coast, where he recounts the events of last Christmas, including his suicide attempt. On Saturday afternoon, the young narrator recounts the events that led to his current condition of emotional turmoil and continued through the following Monday afternoon. For whatever reason, he is unable to adapt to his new school due to his grief over the death of his brother Ali. His baseball glove is adorned with lyrics. At first, he is disgusted by how the educational system treats its students. In his mind, there is nothing but bad and troubles. From the principal's disparate treatment of kids in different courses to the piano player's deliberate missteps in order to win over the audience to the professional actors, everything is staged for him. 3 schools expelled him. When it comes to Ackley, Holden's friend and Ackley's roommate, Ackley has a reputation for his acne and intolerance for those who are taller than him, but Stradlater, Holden's roommate, is even worse. He lies to the students, flirts with the professors, and does nothing else with his life. They got into an argument over Jane Gallagher, a girl. He liked her, but he was afraid Stradlater was after her for some reason. After the incident, Holden bids Professor Spencer farewell and departs for New York City. 3 days from now, Holden's parents will find out about his runaway, and he knows that his mother would be heartbroken and his father will be angry. To make the most of his vacation, he chose to stay for 3 days before coming back to reality. On the outside, he appears to be no older than 16 at 5 feet 10 inches and with graying hair. At the lounge, the waiter refuses to serve him booze because he's staying in a shady hostel. He orders a Coke instead because he is disgusted by the idea. In the next attempt, he goes after a girl who is with 2 of her friends whom he accuses of being witches. He joins them on the dance floor, buys their drinks, and then she turns him down like a baby. Angry, he summons a taxi and makes his way to Greenwich Village's Ernie's for a drink. Everyone over the age of 16 is welcome here. During the ride in the cab, he asks the driver where the Central Park ducks go in the winter, a question that has been torturing him for a long time. The cabbie doesn't say much. He went to Ernie's and had a drink there. To make matters worse, everyone around him appears to be a charlatan and his high school friends talk about the music in vain and adore it because they think it's intelligent. He runs into DB's ex-girlfriend. Holden thinks he's selling himself when he goes to Hollywood to develop scripts. To win her over, he begins to play the game of winning her over to his brother, but he soon realizes she is a fraud. Depressed lift boy offers a prostitute to Holden when he returns to hotel. While he initially agreed, he quickly changed his mind and paid Sunny the $5 he had agreed to pay. Later, when holding Holden's money against his will and punching him in the stomach, she returns with Maurice. On his first day in New York, Holden is humiliated by this incident. New York City was still fresh in his mind the next day, so he left the hotel and went for a stroll. He made plans to meet up with an old buddy named Sally, whom he sees only on rare occasions. It wasn't long after that he came across two nuns and decided to give each of them $10, even though he was running low on funds. On Broadway, he decides to take a stroll. Jane and Phoebe were the two people he had in mind when he made the call. Despite her age, Holden is very fond of Phoebe. To make matters worse, Sally bumps into a fellow student and they all go ice skating together. Sally rejects Holden's offer to go to a forest camp, far from the glare of New York City's neon lights. Holden makes a sexist remark about her and then feels bad about it. Unfortunately, he couldn't accept his own apology because she refused to accept his. After that, he called an old friend from college, and the two of them met up in a posh pub. When Holden's friend is about to depart, he teases him about how much he enjoys the booze and heads to the park. He had made up his mind to go check on the ducks, but it began to rain as he was leaving. That realization made him decide to break into his parents' house to visit Phoebe, as he was running low on money. Fortunately, his parents were away and the maid was fast sleeping, so he could get away with it. Upon seeing him, his sister was overjoyed, but she quickly learned he had been expelled from school, and she made an effort to reassure him of the need of attending. When he expressed his dissatisfaction with school, she was able to empathize with him some. Before he goes, Phoebe's reminds him of the need of school once more, because his parents have returned. He told her at the last minute that he was going west. His mother entered the room as he switched out the lamp. Phoebe is refusing to acknowledge the presence of Holden and even accepts responsibility for the odor of cigarettes. Holden eludes capture and makes a surprise visit to meet an old professor from his college days. He welcomed him in, despite the fact that it was still early in the morning. Holden remained attentive as he spoke, as well as another speech on the significance of education. Eventually, Holden succumbed to tiredness on the sofa. In the wee hours of the morning, Holden is startled awake by his professor's rubbing of his head, which causes Holden to fear that his professor is homosexual, so he seeks refuge in the Grand Central train station. To Phoebe's school he left a letter and set up a rendezvous at a museum in the morning, again wandering the streets of New York. Phoebe has a bag with her, and she is heartbroken when her brother refuses to let her accompany him to the West. Holden persuades her to join him on a ride at an amusement park. At some point during their time together, Holden decided to call it quits and return home. He made a decision to accept whatever fate threw at him. A mental facility is shown to be where Holden has ended up. He was being questioned by the psychoanalyst about his potential behavior once he returns to school. For Holden, the only way to know what will happen is to wait and see. Holden tells us about his current situation and his brother DB's visit in a brief epilogue at the end of the story. Characters: Holden Caulfield, Spencer, Ackley, Stadlater, Jane Gallagher, Ed Banky, Ernest Marrow, Mrs. Marrow, Faith Cavendish, Phoebe Josephine Caulfield, Bernice Krabs, Ernie, Horwitz, Lillian Simmons, Sonny, Maurice, Arthur Childs, Sally Hayes, Louis Shanley, Harris Macklin, Carl Luce, Mr. Antolini. Holden Caulfield, main character of the novel. A disobedient 17-year-old who was dismissed from school despite his intelligence and excellent command of the English language because he failed 4 subjects. His younger sister Phoebe, his older brother DB, and his younger brother Ali, who died of leukemia, all live in New York City. His red hat distinguishes him from the rest of society. He wanted to keep an eye on the kids so that nothing bad might happen to them while they were having fun. He viewed the adult world as corrupt and full with hypocrisy. He's hypersensitive and unable to adapt to any situation. Even though he appears to be an adult, he retains a youthful innocence and sincerity. Despite his attraction to adult life, he still views it as wicked and is baffled by the lack of authenticity in human interactions. The friendliness and honesty of youngsters are highly valued by him, and he has a great sense of humor. Because he was careless and immature, he had a greater grasp on them than most adults did. Ackley, a boy from the room next door at Pensy that Holden didn't like much because he was boring. Stradlater, Holden's roommate, was someone Holden despised not only because he was conceited but also because he was seeing a lady Holden admired. Jane Gallagher, a girl with which Holden spent the entire summer and he still liked her. Seeing her out with his roommate made her gag. Phoebe Caulfield, Holden's younger sister that was witty and smart. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.